Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's Lucid, and I am joined once again by the sagely Sai.
This is Sai, and I'm joining the equally wise and sagacious Lucid.
Oh, thank you. So it is turn 23, and we come to bring you a new turn in the tournament finals. You can see we got quite a few messages here. One of the things that should not be happening is we see that Arthia is attacking TNG, and some of you will remember that Arthia was upset that the TNG had agreed to give them some land, and then after the war was over, they came to collect, and then once the coalition against TNG was over, TNG's like, yeah, we're not getting that back, because anyway. So they've considered that a NAP violation and have launched a rather large alpha strike on TNG.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that large as far as alpha strikes go, but they did have a relatively narrow border, and they also had like relatively few large magic phase resources available or stealth resources available to them. So everything that they're doing here as part of their alpha strike is magic phase, which means it's considerably more expensive than a similar thing that you can do with, say, a flying nation or a stealth nation, where you have kind of more natural access to be able to hit a bunch of provinces at once. With
Right.
Arithia, all their regular armies are very slow.
Right, and this is on the back of TNG deciding that they're going to fight Pangaea because they don't want Pangaea and Gath to be overly strengthened by Viim falling. And then meanwhile, we've of course got the coalition against Viim where they're fighting, Gath and Zabalba and Pangaea. So things are, especially this turn, things are a clusterfuck. It's so much chaos and all sorts of stuff happening.
Yeah, I would say that it's more like it's TNG TNG plus Viim versus the world for a round two. And that's something that I think that the world, namely Shabalba, Gath, and Arithia, being the relevant powers left, are going to have a pretty major advantage.
Yeah.
And Pan, yeah, are going to have a pretty major advantage. Both because Gath and Pan seem to already have a pretty big resource advantage compared to Viim, which just lost so much land in the initial round of the wars. And while TNG was able to do very well in fending off the coalition last time, in this case, I don't think that Pangaea has any real reason to hold back because the lines are kind of already drawn. Arithia is absolutely stuck in their war against TNG, so they're not going to be switching sides. And Shabalba isn't like threatening enough that them switching is going to be a major difference in power. So the 4v2 really favors the 4 side outside of, just the obvious thing of the 4 side being bigger. I also think that they just have the stronger nations on their side right now, namely just Pangaea and Gath.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The other thing, maybe just to point out, and we'll get into this probably more as we talk about the messages, but when you elf somebody because you perceive a nap was broken or you're breaking your nap or whatever, really hard to go back to peace after that. So this may be the start of basically a forever war between Arithia and TNG. Like this war may not end until one of these players is dead. Okay. We'll start with the diplo. Message from TNG. War with Pan and Gath begins. We have prepared for the Pan part by building forts closer along our border, such that we can advance without giving an opportunity for idle drops. We're also doing iron walls on the northern waste this turn so that we don't really have to defend that path into our empire. Yeah, and that's one thing. Pangaea is making all of these sages, but they don't really have great siege strength, so we'll see how they approach that. We'll be very curious to see what happens with Gath when the Gath-Veti Doomstacks fight. The ideal scenario is that both armies take heavy attrition. I don't think that's ideal. I think if you're TNG, you're rooting for Viim here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't think that he wants Viim to take losses from a grand strategy perspective. He actually needs Viim to be strong because that's his only ally left in the game.
Yeah, he's kind of tied himself to Viim. Like his fate and Viim's might go hand in hand here. Our path to victory more or less requires taking at least one throne from the Veti region eventually. That wasn't part of your path to victory, I don't think. Did we? We never said he needed to take Viim's stuff.
Yeah, don't think he did. I mean, looking at the throne count, I don't think he actually needs to go through Vettihheim at all, because if you look at the thrones that he needs to win, it's all in the Arithia Pangaea sphere of influence.
He literally needs to just fight the people he's fighting right now, which is Arithia Pangaea, and he wins. Okay, either side winning decisively is bad for our position.
He would need to crush them pretty decisively, since someone else would be able to stop the throne rush as he starts going towards the outlying.
Yeah. We need those superpowers to grind each other down. Okay, yeah. We know how you and I think about that. Pan appears to have like 200 Centaur Sages just on our north border. I expect some of them are army size boosting items. Oh, I don't think so. 100 units that are mostly Centaur Sages isn't very credible.
I think it is, actually, yeah.
I think it is.
If Pan is going for the just mass communion, spam and slave style of army strategy, then you really can just bring a massive pile of these sages to any given battle.
Yeah, I mean, they're not much different than the cost of... Yeah, they're like 25 more gold than a Black Templar. Yeah, they're cheaper than Hockmeisters. So
they're one of the most efficient mages in the game when you consider their both like the power that they get from their pathing, just because they make these super efficient communions, and also just the strength of the chassis itself, which we've discussed at length over the course of this an arc.
And the fort game, I mean, just look at this. It's crazy for Pangaea, so it does make sense. And there's most of these, and I don't think that gets reflected in the graph. I can't remember, but these are citadels, so they're doing a 1.5 sages a turn. I think, right? Or no, they don't get citadels.
Yeah, they don't get citadels naturally, but they can get it from either the blood spell or from that mercenary guy.
Yeah, I think he got the mercenary guy for a couple turns. Okay, as the world freezes, did I finish this previous one? We've kind of telegraphed our plans to advance along the coast, so we're attacking the inland fort this turn. As the world freezes, our mountain survival bless is actually pretty sweet. It might be a better bless than most of the other survivals in the game featuring survivals in games featuring Nifl-line nations. Also, the horde of basic human archers that we're marching to war with are intended as bodyguards. Aside from our flyers, they're our best troop for killing naked dryads in assassination battles. And we didn't actually patrol last turn, but are gambling that no assassins snuck into our main staging fort.
Pretty hefty gamble. But yeah, it's pretty good that he's thinking about like what actually works in these assassination battles. One thing that actually works out surprisingly well are light cavalry units, just very fast lancer guys. Though you don't tend to see those quite as much in LA, and TNGs have composite bows, so they don't work quite as well for just zipping across the field and stabbing a dryad to interrupt its spellcasting before it can get the first swarm off.
Yeah. All right. Message here from Gath. Our biggest loss last turn was not to the Vettihheim skirmish, but to my gift of Kurgi Bearer being banished to the void after only 2 casts. Gift of Kurgi lets you cast Sin Lesser Horror. So, yeah. I wish the game took the 2 times 6% chance to get a hero every turn just as seriously as it took the 2% void chance, since I haven't seen a hero in a while. Overall, my blood economy is not large enough yet to sustain demon troops, horrors, items, and bigger summons like vamps. Something needs to be skipped, and for now, it will have to be the vamps.
Yeah, so funny thing about Gift of Kurgi is that it's fairly accessible because it requires only blood to make. So it's one way for like non-astral powers to get a limited number of Sin Lesser Horrors, and even for someone like Gath, it can be fairly efficient just if you're able to use it over the course of several turns. So it doesn't hurt that badly to lose it, honestly. He's calling that a big loss, but I think it's only like 40 slaves and pretty easy to reforge.
Yeah. Yeah, I had it in a game where I had to use my Pretender to forge it every time that it died, and it did die a frustrating... it might be higher than 2%, because in my game I also had it... I don't know. It definitely was more than 1 in 50 turns it died, because the game's on turn 80, and I think it already died 4 times. So... As for the Vettihheim War, he used to have a lot more gems than I lost stuff in that battle, which is, of course, the ultimate goal. A moment should come when he will not be able to freely use 45 gems per battle plus about 20 for the teleport gateway that is only on my front. Oh, and that is only on my front. Yeah, so he's basically just saying Vettihheim is getting bled out of gems.
And that mass raiding also means that they lost a huge portion of their gem income. So their bank just isn't getting refreshed as quickly either.
Yeah. To the serious stuff, though, my test showed that the battle against his Veti army, where his god drops rigor turn 0 and cleansing, is almost always a mutual annihilation, where I kill everything but can't kill his god in Ill Earth before everything falls asleep. This obviously is much worse for me and reminds me of the Mictlan War, which I'm now watching on YouTube. I lack some of the important things to handle it better, I think. I will be adding some Whites and Lich Skelly spam and carry-on reanimation to eat Wither Bones, as well as more 30 morale casters for the crucial spells like Relief, as well as more 30 morale casters for crucial spells like Relief and Wailing Winds. So yeah, basically the thinking is if his Relief casters run off because of Wailing Winds, he's, going to pass out. And then if his Wailing Winds caster runs away, it's obviously going to be pretty bad too.
I wonder what he's planning on using for the Wailing Winds caster. I assume just an empowered Wraith Lord or something.
Yeah, that's my guess as well. I wonder. No, I think it's Ashdod that gets like the Detenu and stuff, which I can't remember if they can roll air randoms, but...
Oh, I know you're talking about the undead guys. You're talking about the Maliks, I think.
The Maliks, and I think there's another kind too.
I don't believe that they get air. I think they're just Earthfire Astral, because those are the Ashdod paths.
Yeah, okay.
But either way, they're not a...
I'm guessing you're right. I'm guessing it's an empowerment as well for Gath. I can't think of how else he would do it.
Yeah, only other thing I could think of is if he gets that Demon Lord, the Storm guy.
Yeah. Okay, from Gath. However, he now walked into the open, which makes him vulnerable. So unless he puts up a dome or manages to gateway away faster, I will leprosy those 350 units with 7+ pin and do some popcorn-worthy stuff, which, of course, may fail miserably if he expects it. The TNC war begins this turn, but I will not be able to participate much yet because of the Vetiheim Doomstack. Message from Vetiheim. So this turn might be the big one. I don't know how this fight's going to go. It's a bit of a gamble. Maybe Gath won't take the fight either, and he'll just move on to my other fort. But presuming he does stand still to fight it, I'm dropping multiple domes to mitigate the impacts of remotes like Infernal Disease, Horrors, and even Murdering Winter. Okay, so he's doing domes, which Gath was saying he was kind of hoping he wouldn't do.
Yeah, and it makes sense, too. If you're protecting a very expensive army in motion like that one, you need the domes in place. Especially in Vetiheim's case, this is one of the only advantages that he has from just, fighting on the home front, is that he should be able to move in domes consistently, and his opponents should not.
Right. He's even dropping a wizard tower on his army to halt gem baiting and moving at him. It's my last opportunity before summer kicks in, and the structure of his army means that I'm unlikely to be able to do any damage to it remotely myself. So if I don't take this fight, he gets pretty free run of my southern territory and I can't fight him. I haven't tested much this game so far, but I did spend some time testing this out. It's tight. Seir are extremely destructive. If he brings a lot of new stuff to the table, then the fight is probably just done. Heck, if I'm unlucky on any morale rolls, it's also done. I figure I have about a 60 to 70% chance to win at the moment. Some of the 20% rolls, though, are incredibly one-sided. So let's hope that if I don't win, at least I do cause a lot of damage. If he magic phases my connection to the Silver Throne, I'll lose my Wrathful Skies caster, and I don't know if I win without that. My presumption is that he expected a possible fight last turn, so I just saw his force, and anything else coming in would be minor. It makes sense. It's a stocked force with multiple uniques and temp gem items, and he's missing a Will of Fates caster, but I'm assuming one will be added. Separately, also random raids and an SC play versus Balba on my throne.
SC plays against the, weapons of sharpness, magic weapons, Ocelotls are very, very hard, as we saw. Because Argo's SCs that he was sending in, admittedly it was much earlier game, and Vetiheim can put together some even beefier boys. But those were still Tartarian level chassis with Moss Body. And if that's not enough, it's a very tall order to the point where you need stuff like Super Reinvig Phoenix Pyre or
artifacts.
Artifacts or other ways of getting just extraordinarily high stacked mitigate in order to get to that point. Like you could make a Soul Rain SC, for example, that could do it. But outside of like that and other like extreme high HP, high buff targets, it's very hard to tank that kind of damage output.
The other thing too is you kind of still need a Storm Staff. Like the kind of rule for like, oh, you need a Storm Staff to fight Zabalba armies with your army. That kind of also applies to SCs because maybe you can get all the buffs off before they land on turn like 1.5. But, a lot of times you can't, or maybe you need like 3 rounds of buffing or something. So having a Storm Staff is also really nice.
It's some kind of retinue setup, like where you have the Storm Staff holder wearing the crown that summons a bunch of long dead and retreats after a couple rounds would probably be the best way to do that.
The good news is kind of what he's pointing out here, which is that he hasn't seen lifelong protection deployed. I'm sorry, life for life deployed. And Zabalba's really been rolling really light with their mages. So it's unlikely he's going to have like major, like disintegrate spam or things like that coming out against him, or life for life. So we'll see. The humorous thing that could happen if Gath moves at me and I tower and Pan drops his god, Gath would kill or at least bump the grinder god of his. I'm expecting a collision of gym baits on the province this turn. I wish I had more research. 3 red seconds would be more efficient. This pretty much empties my gym banks. I regret the Unfrozen now. A Ravenous Swarm is too good versus Undead. I can't really run rigor plays with a small amount of elite Undead. My testing shows Liches and Vampires and Unfrozen just keep getting deleted in a longer fight. I could use the Water Gems. The extra Earth is nice, though if no Ravenous Swarm, they would work incredibly well. But I can't really risk that. Well, wish me luck. This could easily decide how relevant I am. I win, and I'm going to make it out alive. A big loss, and I'm going to be the next rump state most likely, and Gath will be well on his way to a win.
Yeah, big talk. It looks like we should be expecting at least one really big battle this turn.
Yep, and a short message from Arthia. Time to strike on TNG. He will probably say that I broke an app, but my opinion is that when you break your word, all non-binding deals are void. Hopefully we can crush him.
All order. I mean, he survived the last attempt to crush him. So I think that, even with the advantage of an alpha strike, Arthia should not be expecting a particularly easy war.
Yeah. And the other problem doing stuff like this is there's a chance TNG will just spite him, right? And it would be easy for TNG if TNG's like, okay, you're going to do this to me, buddy. He could like give land to other players and just all in Arthia. But that might not be the worst thing in the world for Arthia, but I don't know. But I think this pretty clearly is an app break to me. If you are elfing somebody because of a disagreement instead of like fixing it by talking with them, you're nap breaking. So I don't think it's really just TNG's opinion. But let's see what they are, though.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of magic-based fights, and from what we've seen deployed by Arthia before, I'm guessing it's going to be a fair number of golems. Oh, this is air elemental. Okay.
This is a budget air elemental.
I actually really like those. They're one of my favorite cheap raiding parties.
Yeah, that's really nice. Let's just cover this Arthia TNG thing. We'll do this. We'll kind of do the surprise here from the minion, and we'll go to the other parts. I don't know if this is going to work. I think he's going to get yeeted before the air elemental kills things.
Yeah, heavy cav. There's a couple province types like that, yeah.
Yeah. If you're a really sweaty tryhard, you'll note down what the province types are in each province so that if you ever, like he's probably fought in a lot of these provinces before.
This is
so this is a golem.
That's more or less what I was expecting, just because this is what he'd been using before. The 2 pearls there means that he can do returning afterwards. So he can take the province and then beat whatever gets sent to kill it.
What? Now, this is not unsupported PD. There's this guy who's a death 2. Potentially do disintegrate. This guy can do shatter.
Yeah, but those 2 guys can definitely kill. Oh, yeah. With 2 earth mages, they're both set to advance and cast, they can absolutely kill that guy. Honestly, golems like this are very dangerous to use offensively into a major death nation, because even guys just walking around site searching, like even literally just unscripted death mages that are just spamming skeletons, can potentially turn timer you.
Yeah, I think, he's getting hit by Shatter. Yeah, you're right. even just basic skeletons, and especially with a kit like this, because this guy, the skeletons are immune to the area of effect. He's going to kill one guy a turn, best, right? And likely with 8 attack, he's going to miss a skeleton. So, well, I guess they'll be entangled. But it does not take much to just quagmire these guys. And this guy just got deleted and probably did a gear donation.
Yeah, I mean, with that many commanders there's a very decent chance.
Yeah, from Arthia with care should have been the name of that golem. Or no, from Arthia with love. What there's a movie that's from something with love.
From Russia with love?
From Russia with love, that's it.
Yeah, James Bond movie.
Yeah. Okay, we've got another air. So right now Arthia is 1 for 3. Now he's 2 for 4. Oh wait.
And yeah, those golems are not cheap even just because of the chassis price. Like the golem itself is a fair number of pearls, and pearls are like quite likely Arithia's most valuable gem type.
Right, because presuming they're a wish farm, and like this is 10 gems too. So, and then 2 here. So, I mean, you start adding this all up, and it's probably, because like even if we just said it's 40, the 30 for the golem and then the 10 for this, you multiply that by 2, it's like an 80 gem thing. And then the rest of the gear, it's almost like 100 gems worth of stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the multiplying thing because like you are going to spend pearls in general.
But if you're doing a wish farm, you are alchemizing other things into pearls.
Yeah.
So I think it is.
I think
we're at the game where he's doing that. So I think it's a fair assumption.
Yeah, the other funny thing about the golems is that he's had these for a while, right? Like this is what he was using for his initial part in his earlier wars as kind of like his raiders, just because he wasn't sending out like any real armies. So in a sense, he did at least have these already lying around. But I like keeping golems. I think that there's a lot of stuff you can do with them that also functions as a raider. Particularly late game, I think that one of the best uses for them is with lifelong protection and ring of returning, where they basically function as counter raiders where they can teleport on top of particularly immortals, spam soulslay, while also being able to handle province defense just fine with the imps.
Yeah, they're really good. I like that setup a lot. I've ever since the finals where you were doing that, and I think other people in the game started doing that too in response, I've seen it in quite a few games since then. So
yeah, I mean, it's just a very efficient setup because it's fairly cheap and you're very unlikely to lose it. So it's very risk averse as well. Yeah. And it handles some of the most annoying late game stuff that you're likely to face, like just, naked liches running around grabbing provinces.
Right. Okay. Then, well, let's go now and just watch the rest of this stuff here in the main portion on the strategic map.
Yeah, so the regular phase assaults seem to be going better. Most likely because even though TNG could see those armies on his borders, he wasn't expecting them to hit him quite yet.
Right. Well, there wasn't even a war declaration, right? So TNG just assumed they were at peace, I'm sure. Yeah, this probably isn't exactly worth looking at. Let's see what the Prince of Sun is doing. I guess he's bringing these guys for their high leadership value. Oh, he did paint a few buffs on them.
They also just have less research than the Dudukudos.
So might as well have them out leading troops.
Yeah, the downside of using those guys as your only leaders, though, is that they do have insanity. It's not like a huge amount of insanity, but you don't want them to be the only commander in your stack because otherwise your troops can get stuck.
Yeah. Okay, so this was one of the golem attacks. This was one of the air elemental attacks. And, so Arithia is kind of trying to, cut him like a knife, right down the middle, split him in half.
I wonder what the thinking was with that. Did he know that there was a lab there and he's trying to get to that? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think he might just be trying to mess up logistics. I'm not totally sure.
Bounced, it also looks like he's trying to surround the capital, actually.
Oh, that is what it looks like.
Yeah, he missed one, though, and he definitely could have magic phased onto that one if that was his plan. The one to the left of the capital.
Yeah. And this is kind of, in some ways, the most important one, because these guys, this is one of TNG's best armies. So.
Yeah, forking his armies away from his capital, if he's going for a deep strike like that, would definitely be high on my priority list if that was what I was going for. And it's also the case that if that's your plan and you want to like blitz down the capital for some reason, then you kind of also need to have an army in place that's going to be able to take that cap fight. And it doesn't look like Arthia has anything that's even close to being able to do that.
Yeah, and this is just a PD dump here. And not a huge dump, but it wasn't for this purpose. It was probably just part of the Pangaea War or something from before.
Could even be from events. If you check out the event history, you'll be able to see if that's
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the crossbows. This is what crossbows are good against: is heavy infantry, and you can see they carry the day here.
Didn't they? I think it's just the commander routing actually.
Was it?
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Commander ran first. The squad was still pretty healthy.
Okay. Did she get hit?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's been hit. Okay.
He's diseased now as well.
Yeah. Rip.
He might have been diseased beforehand, but yeah, definitely diseased now.
So a lot of, TNG looks like they've lost a fair amount of land so far in this. Yeah. And Arthia's up some. Pangaea doing some light raiding here. And TNG moved on top of this fort and has popped it. So this is interesting. He magic phases in to kind of clear the way. This is actually pretty good even if you lose the guy, because it's like...
I think that... Isn't that just PD? Because I know that they get harpies as PD. I think he was expecting this guy to actually win.
Oh.
What? God, was that just a massive hit?
I think it was a massive DR roll.
Wow, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, plus 34. Oh, Jesus.
Well, that was unlikely.
Yeah, Soul Vortex here should have won. But he was right, the turn 1 cast Soul Vortex.
Oh, yeah, because you know what the PD type is. Yeah, so that's just regular Pan PD. The Harpies in LA Pan's PD type are like sometimes really, really good just because they can interrupt casting because they like land turn 1. But the PD in general below 20 is very weak units. Like if you look at like just the actual unit composition. So it's very easy to raid with like a small group of heavy infantry with like a guy casting protection on them, for example. So their fort PD is like sometimes really good if you're like just worried about a caster, but most of the times very weak.
Yeah.
And this is a real army, yeah. And I can see why at turn 1 popped it with that many eagles.
Yeah. There's a bunch of eagles, and then these are wyverns, which have that magic barbed tail.
Yeah, so the thing with wyverns is that they become size 6 with Army of Giants cast on them. And having size 6 bodyguards, which is what he's using the eagles for here as well, is very valuable for preventing air elementals from squishing your mage core.
Right. That's a great point. Though they're not bodyguards. All bodyguards.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's got mass flight on the cubes, so that's pretty cool.
Since they're not
take a look at all the buffs again.
Yeah, and he'd mentioned he was using the archers as bodyguards against Dryads, so it makes sense there. Even, I suppose, without bodyguarding, they still do provide that wall, but they're not going to help out against later air elementals.
Yeah. So let's see what buffs got put on.
Although, actually, if he's doing his own mass flight right away, then maybe he's not super worried about air elementals because they would already be in melee of his flying armies.
Right. Stygian Rain. Will of Fates. Moss Body. We don't have weapons of sharpness or something, which the Eagles certainly wouldn't mind.
Well, the Eagles, I don't think are his primary damage dealer here, really. Like, I think he's relying on the cubes to do the killing.
That's true. They're probably just HP sponges.
And of course, Siege Chaff, they're incredibly efficient for that.
Yeah. So the challenge here, of course, is there's literally a million sages around here, and he's popped this. So, and wait, no. Pan can't jump on him because it's Pan's God, so Pan's God would go inside. So he has to worry, if I storm the fort, do I fight Pan's God? And then he also has to worry about literally every sage that's ever been made coming out and fighting him. Pangaea raids over here with a small stack of sages, as one does. Oh, and this was interesting. So this was a trap by TNG, expecting pretty much a large Pangaean force here.
And instead, it's just these sages.
Right.
I really do like these sage squads. We should check how close Pan is to finishing research.
This guy just fly away? Yeah, and then the wyverns jump in. I'm pretty sure Pan's done. Oh, not quite. Not quite. Nobody's done yet, but they're working on it.
Yeah, sometimes you see the graphs slope down right when research is finished. But in this case, I think it's more just because he's moving a bunch of mages around.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so I mean, this is really exciting. This is gonna. Oh goodness, look at this.
Yeah, and here TNG was saying that he doubted Pan even had this many mages. No, they're real.
Oh man, and these are celestial soldiers. They're no joke.
Yeah, although he only really got one good damage cast off with that gift from heavens.
Yeah. Okay, so he kills 9 of the sages, five of these guys, and for the cost of 2 celestial soldiers. I think that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, that bad of it. But on the other hand, he also did burn a bunch of gems with that defending army. But yeah, so here you're basically just seeing the incredible speed of those guys being able to zip around these sages wherever they're needed in order to support wherever your troops happen to be.
Yeah. Controls out some heretics. Okay, so I think we've covered pretty much most all of the TNG Pan War. And I think we're set up to have a huge battle this turn. I mean, there's a chance that TNG gets cold feet or backs off and maybe puts a trap here in case Pangaea brings all the sages. I don't think that's in character, though. I think TNG is like, hey, I've got all my gear. I'm going to make plays. This is my this is my peak in the game in terms of timing. Let's go.
Yeah, Demosthenes has very consistently shown that he's willing to deploy serious armies and take real fights. That's just kind of been his shtick, and that's how he survived the first coalition war. So I similarly don't expect that to be a trap. Personally, especially in the opening phases of the war, I tend to be a lot slower about deploying big armies. I'm like, okay, we're going to send out the little medium stacks. We're going to be able to beat PD and some gem burning defense. But if you want to see a real stack, I need to know what I'm actually, going to be sending it into. Demosthenes has not had that kind of cowardice, if you want to call it that, at all. He's ready to go with what he has and like I mentioned, consistently. He has always been doing this. So because of that, I absolutely don't expect him to do a trap. But that said, I also think a trap would be pretty clever here, because you know that Pangaea can't really magic base on that, right? Because it's Pangaea's fort. And you also know that he has a huge number of sages surrounding this province, which means that he's almost certainly going to be defending it with a very heavy mage commitment, even if it's not necessarily a massive amount of troops. So if you have something that can actually just kill a bunch of sages, which is, again, a tall order because they're very tanky boys, and they also have pretty good buff paths for round 1 buffing. But, if you do have something that can kill a large number of them, it can absolutely be very efficient to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, we kind of have an idea what Pangaea might do. We know it's going to be a ton of sages, and we know they're going to be casting a lot of spells, and it's probably going to be Soul Slay and Slave Mind and Gift of Heaven. But we haven't really, every time Pangaea has deployed an army before, it's been kind of low commitment. Maybe it's 40 sages, which is a lot of mages, but it's always been there haven't been a lot of gems on the mages. There haven't been gear on the mages. There's no summoned units, small army, things like that. And we don't see anywhere around here, summoned units. There's no proper army stuff. So either it's going to be a bajillion mages and then they're going to do kind of more of the same. Or yeah, I don't know. I think kind of Demosthenes in some ways has already done his probing. In the previous war with Pangaea, he's I kind of know what you're going to do. You're going to throw 40 mages at me with a few troops, try to enslave mind, maybe do 60, enslave mind, Soul Slay, Gifts of Heaven me. And he's I got a plan for that. Come and get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing is that while you were saying, he's only just going to bring a huge number of these tanky astral mages that are buffed to the gills, spamming Enslaved Mind, but that's actually pretty strong, as a core strategy.
It's pretty strong, but we haven't seen it be strong yet.
True.
Because it's every time we've seen it so far, we've seen it 40 or 50 of these mages versus a TNG real proper kitted full out army, and he's basically pretty much stomped Pangaea every major fight they've had.
Yeah, I would even go so far as to argue that Pangaea hasn't had a major fight yet, because we haven't really seen him spend gems.
Yeah. Now, Pangaea's going on the offensive over here. So this was, I guess, one part we missed in the
But again,
Pangaean
only 22
War.
mages. And like
So
this is not... I mean, yes, 22 mages is pretty big, even at this stage in the game. But like he's not bringing a huge number of gems here. That Pan might be doing Army of Gold. That's the only thing I can think of, or one of those Pans, I should say.
Yeah, let's take a look.
No, that's not
it. Looks like
that's...
mass regen.
Okay, that's
this one. Yeah, Army of Gold.
Okay, so he's doing probably Army of Gold or Army of Lead, mass regen. I assume that the Fire guy's doing something interesting. The warrior.
Yeah.
Nope, he's...
he was just leading the troops with the pocket ship.
Okay.
So
yeah, just very, very small gem commitment.
This is kind of pretty much par for the course for what we've been expecting from Pan, right? This actually is exactly what I was just talking about. It's this like 20 to 50 mages doing some stuff with a few troops. In this case, it looks like it's upgraded some because it's got Army of Gold and mass regen, which is going to be nice.
But it's still not the full suite of battlefield buffs that the likes of Viim and TNG have already been deploying.
Right, and it's not going to hold up against, like, 60 celestial soldiers with all the buffs on them and stuff like that, so. Okay. So, we're getting some inklings of what's cooking over here. Should be a very exciting next turn.
Yeah, I really do hope that Pangaea deploys a real army because, like I mentioned, we haven't seen that yet from them this game. But we saw some very good scripting in the very early game, right? Like when they were fighting Mictlan. But since
that was
then,
a masterful sleeping cloud battle.
Yeah, but like since then, we haven't seen anything late game from them. Like even when they were fighting Marignon, for example, it was all just like eating stuff for free, stealthy raiders, that sort of thing. Then when they fought TNG, as we'd mentioned, it was all these very low commitment, or I shouldn't even say like that low commitment, because they did deploy real mages, but they didn't ever try to match the type of force that TNG was bringing, and is in fact bringing here again. So I really do hope that we actually see what they're actually going to be pulling out.
Well, let's take a look. I mean, there's probably 60 Centaur Sages here. None there. Probably 20 here.
And the Etten is a transformed mage of some kind.
Probably 80 here.
Well,
I mean, so just in these 3 forts, there's probably 150 Centaur Sages. So, I mean, that's kind of the frightening. The frightening thing of fighting Pan is like you don't know how many dryads there are in any single province, and you have no idea how many Centaur Sages are going to show up at any engagement. So, like, I mean, he could probably even bring more. Like, these guys probably can't make it down here.
Yeah, but the ones 2 forts out absolutely can.
Yeah, these guys can. So, he could have 140 Centaur Sages knocking on his door here. And to TNG's credit here, he's taken a chip out of them. He's taken 9 out here, and then 1 here, and then 1 here. So, he killed 10 Centaur Sages this turn. 12, maybe.
Yeah, and he absolutely can deal with that army on his Wasteland fort, I would say. Like, I don't think that anyone's expecting that army to go actually kick TNG's butt. The one to the northeast.
This one, yeah. I mean, TNG has shown repeatedly he has what it takes to deal with this. But this could be Pan trying to play this up like, hey, this is what I've been doing, but then switcheroo, like, 60, like another 100 Centaur Sages show up here. The risk, of course, of deploying these huge numbers that I'm talking about is if they die, like while Pangaea can just kind of walk off, like losing 20 mages, it's not a big deal for him. Losing 100 mages would actually be pretty devastating to him. Because that's like his whole strategy right now.
Right, exactly. Having that mage spam. But again, like, it's late enough in the game that he must have some stuff built, right? Like, he's got his one golem. It's sitting there on that throne fort, the golden throne.
Oh, yeah.
Presumably just because that's where it was summoned. It's the farm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Presumably just because that's where he has the earth random guys. That's where it was summoned. But, like, that he has at least something cooking. We're not seeing the cube spam, which I actually really like as Pangaea. Just because you do have lots of water 1s, so it's very accessible. We haven't seen that, and we also haven't seen like temp gem items, which is another thing that I think could be pretty easily widely deployed. Because like even if you are just doing an enslaved mind communion, something like 2 sets of those pearls, so you can do Light of the Northern Star and Power of the Spheres on one of the masters in order to make your communion more efficient. Like there's lots of good use cases where spending a couple gems can make a pretty big difference in your army.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we even saw that here, but this would be like kind of one of the perfect scenarios for that is these kind of, clearly this is like a semi-budget army. So the question is like, would you have...
Yeah, in this case, I actually would go the other way and say that because this army is fundamentally expendable, you don't want to give up a large temp gem item. Particularly the Earth temp gem item, I think costs like 25 Earth gems.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't put the Earth one on that, but Clam of Pearls might be great for this,
or at least affordable.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that. Let's come over here and take a look at Viim, because this is probably where the main portion of the action is.
Yes, this is where we have been explicitly told to expect a big battle.
Right. Okay, so some horrors coming in here. Horrors get killed. Battle in Utgard. Nothing's here. I don't know what they're expecting. That was a really good horror roll, too. It was 4 horrors, but they got... Well, no, I guess not that good. And then on Gath... Oh, this looks like it was pretty successful. This is probably Viim casting Send Horror on Gath. Oh, the old Defiler of Dreams.
Yeah, so I assume that's just the... Yeah, it's just the remote version. He didn't tame one.
No.
I'm looking forward to seeing
I've been implementing your strategy. It doesn't work very well.
It's fun, though. They're so fast.
There's something weird. I haven't been getting... Like, I've got like 100, 200 patrol strength trying to get these guys out of like Spirit Sight patrollers. And like, I don't always get them out. And then like, it's like they never... It's like they disappeared somewhere. I don't know. It's really weird.
Do you think maybe they have the desert chance while they're still hiding?
That could be. It could be.
Something I can think of.
Because I definitely... There's something going on. I have to play around more with it, but it's a cool idea. Okay. Viim. So let's see what happens in the Zabalba area. Uh-oh. So they're trying to storm this throne, and they've got just the smallest... They've got this guy, which is the turn 1 Weapons of Sharpness caster. They've got this guy. That looks like it may be Quickening, but maybe it's something else. And they've got somebody to do Rush of Strength, and this guy to do Wailing Winds, I'm guessing.
Yeah, Wailing Winds is one of those things that anytime you're storming a fort, you kind of just want to have one. It's so very cheap, and when you're storming, everything that retreats is gone. So,
ooh,
yeah,
expensive.
This is their super combatant that they talked about, and I think it's wearing an air hat because it needed to trapeze in order to get into this fort.
Right. So it's got a... I mean, I like these 2 weapons, Flesh Eater and a Thame, and especially if these are weapons of sharpness, Murder Kitties, they'll destroy like a Vine Shield in like 2 seconds or 1 second.
This guy would want Soul Vortex. So I'm surprised he doesn't have a Death Gem.
The Aussies do have kind of a lot of MR. So if they get anti-magic cast on them, which it doesn't look like is going to happen, then Soul Vortex doesn't do much. But versus 13 MR Aussies, it's probably okay. The problem is just Weapons of Sharpness. Weapons of Sharpness, we'll see. Let's see this guy. And there's no storm. So they're almost certainly jumping off right now. So yeah, Wailing Winds is getting cast. What is this guy casting? Oh, Divine Blessing.
Yeah, and I would have guessed that his water gems were for quickening, but with his guys jumping off already, I don't know if he's even going to get to that.
Yeah, so there's Weapons of Sharpness landing. We've got Bloodlust going off. On this side, we've got Regeneration and Moss Body and Liquid Body.
Yeah.
And Iron Warriors. So he's got now 20% regen. He's got Moss Body. He's got Physmos, right? So I just... It's really hard. So this is the kind of fluffing you would want to do.
He's pretty close to the protection cap, actually, as well.
Right. The problem, though, now is these guys are 26 damage. So for the bite attack, 20... Oh, this also hasn't... Oh, wait, no, it has. It's gotten Bloodlust is landed. So...
This is as hard as these guys are going to hit.
Right. So 26 damage. Oh, maybe they did... Was that part of the Blessed Cold Resistance? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, no lightning resistance, which other people had pointed out as a weakness. Is that Moss Body getting topped already?
Yeah, it's gone.
Not a good start.
Let's take a look. Yeah, the Moss Body was like maybe the only hope. I don't know if we'll be able to find it quickly here. But yeah,
maybe
it
he can
definitely
still
got popped.
sustain. He does have a decent amount of hit points, and he has a life leeching weapon. I still think that Soul Vortex would have made a pretty big difference. Because even though the Ocelotls are going to resist it most of the time, it's still a trickle of AoE damage while also healing. Oh no, he's gone.
Which
Wow,
is
that
so
was
much
fast.
damage. Well, and I think at the beginning he had that defense, right? But he's got minus 31 harass penalty now.
Yeah.
Casually.
Do those Ocelotls have quickness?
No.
No? Okay.
It's just that many attacks. It's like you can't.
What's the foot thing? Is that the hey? Oh no, that's the swiftness bless. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what that is. And we kind of talked about that before, how that can like make a difference on the bats.
So these guys landed after the first spell, so he only got one turn off. Is there anything that could be done to make this guy survive it?
Honestly,
because it wasn't close.
Yeah, because I was going to say like, oh, Soul Vortex can help a little bit, but with the speed with which he died, I don't think it would have made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to reduce the incoming damage some way. I can't really think of a good way to do it. I mean, because you're close, you can't increase protection anymore.
Yeah, you're basically like he's taking advantage of Rhyme Hallberg adding additional cold protection to units that already has it in order to push armor to its absolute like limit. So that's kind of the gimmick there for why his protection is able to get that high to begin with. But
he's got the dancing shield, which is going to sort of cut damage in half, though I think with armor piercing, it only cuts it. It's only minus 10 half the time. You can't defense tank it, right? Obviously,
yeah. The only other mitigation sources that I can think of are Astral Shield, which obviously this guy can't do, but it's a very good like Vine Shield style buff. But yeah, like I don't think that would have been enough, especially if Shivalva didn't do anti-magic in this case, so maybe it would have helped more. But yeah, no, it's just hard, man. Like these things are murderous.
Yeah, I think maybe if he had, to me, it comes back to storm staffs. Like if he had a storm staff, like there's not really a lot more buffs to stack on this guy, but like my thinking goes to like, okay, you can't super combatant, but you could have a Neefel Jarl that comes in, he gets buffed up, he's running in while Rigor Mortis is up, while Demonic Cleansing is up, and while you have Swarm and Skelly Spam clogging the gate, and he's got Soul Vortex maybe, or he's got, Reinvigoration, and so he's just chopping his way with a theme through these guys. Something like that might be able to work. I just don't think that these are so hard to super combatant. Phoenix Pyre maybe is the other way, like if he had Soul Vortex. So he could have maybe like fire empowered him and then put a gem on him. But then like life for life kills him and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like, especially given that Shivalva could do life for life. I don't think that there's a way to even try to like make an SC that goes into this.
Yeah, maybe if Moss, but I don't think there was a way that Moss Body was going to hold up for long. But there's I guess the remote possibility that my intuition about that's wrong, and that Physmos would generally hold up 20 or 30 turns, enough turns for the Neefel, because the Neefel Jarl will kill these guys. Like if you give him 30 turns, he's not going to just survive them. He will sit here and kill them all. Yeah. The other option is you just ditch the Flesh Eater and you do 2 Athames and you do quick and you get him buffed with quickness and you get a bunch of life regen that way. I don't think that would have made it, but ideas. Yeah. The strange thing is this is like eminently testable, and kind of one of your notes about Fullick was that he's going to test these sort of things. Not Fullick, Kirkcop.
Yeah, he had mentioned in his message though that he hasn't been doing that much testing this game, and for this turn his testing time was focused on that Gath army.
And that Gath army, let's see what happens. Viim attacking Gath. Oh, Gath moved. This must have been just to like clear off a raiding detachment. Oh, Sword of Augumare, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that's actually one of the better artifacts for armies late game, just because that round 0 Will of the Fates is so valuable against just like super fast battlefield clear stuff. And also just because Will of the Fates, even if like it's eminently castable, is always something that's very high fatigue cost. So outside of just like a massive supercaster or casting it in a communion, the caster kind of takes himself out of the fight by casting that spell. And even
Yeah.
if you are using a communion, it tends to apply a lot of strain just from the 400 fatigue cost.
Ooh. Firestorm coming out too.
Yeah, that is he's kind of covering the bases. Firestorm being basically just in order to prevent Skeleспam from being able to form any sort of like effective barrier.
There's a lot of things looking at this where I'm like, oh man. One, these cubes are going to be great against Viim. Two, he's got a lot. Is it the Yidoni? Who's doing or was it Crystal Mages? Who's doing the spam of Gifts of Heaven?
Probably the Yedioni, because they do have a Earth Astral. Oh, the Crystal Mages, yeah. But the Yedioni do also have Earth Astral as one of their things. Those are the Abbas. The Yedioni are the ones with the dark headbands.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's
so they're
those as
slaves.
Okay. So I guess it is just the Crystal
they're all
Mages
slaves.
Then. Yeah, that's his army of something caster. So yeah, I guess the gifts are just from the Crystal Mages.
Oh, there's more than I thought. Yeah, there's some here. Some here. Wait, were those? There were gems on these Crystal Mages too. Let me just see what's happening. Gem. No gems. No gems. Okay. So what do they do? Summon Earth Power. Okay, so they're doing Summon Earth Power Gifts of Heaven. That's their script.
This is intentional, yeah. And Gifts from Heaven is one of the spells that can get very good in these army versus army fights, because the only thing that even mitigates it is luck. So it's just kind of good versus everything. And
it's very good against the Viim game plan too, which is a lot of times Viim wants to sit there and buff for like 3 or 4 rounds, right? And Gifts of Heaven is an area of effect attack. And if you have all your stuff clumped up for buffing, it's gonna be painful. And it's gonna kill 6 goblins a hit.
Yeah, the one thing that Viim in general can do is at least do some evo baiting with their Moose Riders or similar stuff.
Yeah.
But where was the fight that Viim was expecting?
It was here.
Okay.
So here's the Viim army. So this army would have just had like a bunch. Also, let's see.
Yeah, he does not have enough evocation bait with this stack by any stretch.
Yeah.
This would have
it would get lit up by the heaven so bad.
Yeah. That's something that I think that he, having now seen that Gift of Heaven spam, needs to come up with something to answer. And then, okay, so Gath is just doing a Firestorm trap, basically.
Yeah. Which is kind of good. Let's see what buffs Viim got. So a bunch of Moss Body. These guys have some fire resistance. Is that from their Bliss? I forget. No?
He has. It must be from just the fire buff. Like the manual, either +5 AoE fire spell.
So they're going to be... Most of these guys should be immune to the Firestorm. And then with the... I think Viim is casting the... Yeah.
The Wrathful Skies. That's what he was talking about. Is like the thing that he was worried about his caster getting there.
Right.
And his
caster got there. He cast Wrathful Skies. The question is, do these casters get away? If Gath did this real well, he'll have had enough bait out in front, so by the time the chaff dies, these guys run off. Oh man! But there's Darkness, Quagmire, Rigor Mortis,
Wailing Wind, Relief. Yeah, I think that a major portion of this Viim Doom stack being a Doom stack is that Wrathful Skies. Like, I think that he's actually banking quite a lot on that. He's not bringing a mage mass by any means, but he is bringing a huge pile of sacreds. So I think...
So we had 2 fights. We had this one, which Viim lost a few things, and then this one.
The fight where Viim lost a few things is that army was moving into Gath and got bumped.
Oh, it was. You're totally right about that. You're totally right.
Yeah, so I think Viim expected Gath to be storming there.
Look at these supply lines, too. I mean, there's more stuff coming. I mean, this is probably actually a blood hunting province, but... I mean, and so is this, but if he needs it, the Zealots are hardly useless.
One of the things that we've kind of noted about this war, like right before it broke out, is that Gath just incidentally had a lot of stuff on this border because of how he was setting up his blood economy to use those Zealots as patrollers. So that means that he just incidentally has these sacred stacks ready to go for broad area raiding and fighting.
Yeah. So the problem here is this. So this fort's been popped again. So this fort was popped previously. Viim has rescued it. This fort has been popped now. And so far, Gath has been dodging this Viim fight, bouncing around.
And continuing to eat territory, importantly.
Right. And Viim basically is like, okay, I have to keep taking this army and chasing you, or I risk losing major infrastructure. But doing that, he's like following behind, and Gath gets to set up some custom, trap for him every single province. He's like getting slowly bled out as Gath is outmaneuvering him.
Yeah, and I would say that the bump that split off a section of their mages was also very good.
Yeah.
I
mean, this isn't like huge losses.
But it is still significant. The Adept in particular and the Cap-only Gaija are both very valuable units that presumably are bringing some sort of unique spell to that fight, just based on how Viim has been setting up his armies, because he doesn't tend to use a lot of redundancies. So that's at least some portion of his expected battle magic that's gone now.
Yeah, the other thing just to point out is the Idol of Sorcery is right here. We can see the Wizard Tower went up. But we're also kind of getting a sense of Pangaea also gem-baited him here too. But we're also getting a sense of he can't really use his god here, while the Idols of Sorcery are great, for this army fight, it would be really nice for the god to be able to move into it or to follow around this army, but it can't. So that's of course one of the downsides of immobiles. And yeah, this guy put. Let's see what Pan gym baited with. I don't even think that would count. This shouldn't even trigger gym use. So. Mm-hmm. Oh, Dimvetti trying to take it. I mean, so far, but this isn't really that bad of a turn for Viim, aside from
the expense of that army.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that Viim could do is more assassination stuff. That's the only other thing that I could think that they could do to basically kind of try to do something that uses their defensive advantage. Because we talked about domes, that's one thing that they've got. But other than that, 20 Isaacharite scouts.
Yeah, he's got scout spam. Okay. Yeah, this army's pretty well set up. And then scouts down here, so it's 30 scouts in total. And then to mention, there's still a bunch of other mages here too. A bunch of Yidoni and stuff, so I do, respect to the scout spam here.
And I guess that makes sense, because that's kind of the only other thing that I could imagine Viim doing in order to kind of keep a defensive advantage going.
How big is this army? It's 108 Rimvetti. Here's what I'm wondering. Maybe you just spread this army out. You get them all spread out. Maybe you put the cubes as the Evo bait. Does he have a storm staff? He does. So you have a storm staff. You have your guys all spread out. You do the swarm spam. Maybe that's what I don't think there's... what is he really getting out of grouping? These are point buffs. You don't need your guys together for that. Marble Warriors he benefits from. But Marble Warriors is also very fucking dangerous. He probably kills some people with Marble Warriors, I have no doubt.
Well, his guys have such high base cold resistance that I think even the -5 that they're getting isn't going to push them over the edge.
What did they do for their script? Moss Body, Moss Body, Moss Body... 5 cold resistance is not enough if you're surrounded by Rimvetti.
Yeah, he probably is at least interrupting himself a bit, but I don't think he's killing himself that badly.
I mean, 199 fatigue.
Yeah, I guess the Vedi guy just don't have enough base cold resistance. I was thinking
yeah, this guy's fine because it's got 10, but
yeah, the guys with 5, you're right, actually, that's not enough.
And they start with 5, so he's done a cold resistance buff on them in addition to Marble Warriors.
Oh, check out the cubes, actually. The
30, yeah.
That's Rimvetti.
It's a Rimvetti. 10.
They're at 10, yeah. Okay. So they'll be okay, too.
I think this is a question you have to ask yourself every fight is how much do you benefit from being spread out or clumped together? I don't think there's much of a reason to to clump together, because it's going to exacerbate this problem with the Rimvetti putting everybody to sleep because they're all clumped up. And I would just trust that they're going to come in and kind of clump up to whatever degree they're going to clump up as you engage with the enemy. But I mean, I think if you're expecting Gifts of Heaven spam, this is not a good formation.
Yeah, I think you just need Evo bait, and that's kind of a big ask, because like anything that you bring that's going to attract evocation is of course going to be something that needs to have a fair amount of hit points, which means that you bring yourself into risk of just HP routing yourself.
Yeah.
Your evocation bait, whatever it is, can't be more than half the hit points of your army, but it also still needs to be significant enough that it can take multiple rounds of retail evocation damage.
Yeah.
Then the other thing that you need to worry about is positioning, because buffs tend to look for very similar things to evocation in terms of weighing the value of the troops, which means that for any buff that has like a significant amount of range, using evocation bait, if it's not well away from your main force, also means that you can kind of miss painting some of these buffs that you're relying on.
Yeah, that's so true. The other thing that's worth pointing out here too is that, we can see Mass Regen coming out, Will of Fates. These are all things that once you reach that threshold in research, you don't need to clump your guys up anymore. Like if you're trying to paint, what's the area of effect Will of Fates one? I forget. Battle Fortune? Like, okay, maybe you want to group your guys up. What's like, you got Will of Fates.
Moss body.
Huh?
I think it's mostly for the Moss body.
No, but Moss body, you only need a single tile. Right, and you could have like a tile here, and a tile here, and have a caster here, and he'd be able to hit all these.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that could work. Then the other thing was weapons of sharpness and wave warriors.
That's true. Wave warriors is the biggest one, especially if you're painting Moss body. Where you're like, okay, let's do that. So I guess that's a question: is it worth Is it worth it to put your guys together just to get Wave Warriors on them, where you're risking Gifts of Heaven? And I think that it depends. It matters how much Gifts of Heaven there is, because Wave Warriors with Moss Body is really fucking good.
Yeah, I think that this army is mostly worried about dealing with the Seer. Like, I think that's kind of his number one priority, and that's what he wants to be able to beat. And Gath, the fact that Gath is bringing a significant amount of ancillary magic that's also just really strong regardless of what the troops are in front of them, makes him just a multi-pronged threat, which makes his Doomstack even harder to handle.
Yeah, because these guys, especially with demonic cleansing, I don't even think Sierra are a problem with this. I think these guys...
Yeah, that many Rimvetti with demonic cleansing can absolutely put the Seer to sleep.
Right, yeah. So I think, yeah. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. Let's go up and look at the Pan front of the war. Pan is doing the same kind of... low medium commitment, whatever we want to call this. This is a LA Pan things where you bring 40 troops and 20 mages, and it's not a big deal. Yeah, is it Pan on this?
We kind of already talked about Pangaea's stuff with the TNG front, and it seems that that's where he's really focusing. Like, he's definitely content to let Gath and Shabalba do most of the heavy lifting in the Viim War, and also reap most of the rewards as a result. Like, I think he's much more focused about fighting TNG, in particular because this is a round 2 for them.
Right. Round 2s are always a little bit more salty. Especially when it's a round 2 so quickly after round 1.
Yeah, this was basically truce, okay, well, we're fighting again, actually. The coalition's over, let's keep going. This is interesting. This is Shabalba actually using mages as mages.
Which he's done a few times. He did some light raiding, but he's mixing it now with Aussies. These are going to be point buff to hell. I think they might be. Yeah. Oh, no, some of them are taken off. He must kill these Aussies, right? Point buff Rimvetti, fuck up Aussies. Yeah, okay. Glad my intuition is still with me.
Yeah, especially when there's that few of them. Okay. So is it just that he has enough Skeleton to deal with all this?
I think the problem is this. I think the problem is it's Skeleton versus these guys, and most of them are on Guard Commander. So it's Skeleton versus Skeleton, but these guys are Death 1 mages. Yeah, there's basically 1, 2, 3. There's 3 Death 1 mages versus the Skeleton from a few D2s. And then these guys even though they're going to be almost impossible to get killed against skeletons, they're eventually going to die. Yeah, if those guys just attacked, they would have won.
Or at least it would have been closer, yeah, because this really was just a matter of critical mass, where Xibalba had enough skeletons and there were few enough Veti there that they just couldn't chop through them quickly enough. It definitely would have helped to have all the Veti fighting together rather than in pieces, where you've got one squad of 6 fighting while the rest are still guarding. But even if they had all been attacking, I'm not convinced they would have broken through.
Yeah, and some of this is because I don't think it's known how Touch of Madness works. But because it doesn't affect, it will not target a spell with mages, a square with mages in it, but it will target squares that have mages in it if the only mage in it is yourself, because it can't affect yourself. So you actually can Touch of Madness if the bodyguards are each applied to the single mage. But I can see what he's thinking. Let's see how many Touch of Madness he casts.
He cast only one, actually. He might have gone off script with one of them because he did Tangle Vines. But there was only one.
Think some of this actually is, I think he's fatigued himself out from the chill artists too.
Oh yeah, that'll do it. But he definitely did not cast more than one Touch of Madness here.
Yeah. So I think that's actually probably part of it. He might have even had more scripted, but they probably got fatigued out from this chill aura here and then don't finish their script.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can see they're not doing anything. Like there's no spells getting cast here.
Yes, this was the case of friendly fire, basically. Or friendly cold, rather.
I do think it's actually worth taking a cold 5 bless for Viim. It's pretty cheap. I think it's definitely something worth considering.
The problem is with this particular Viim god, you can't add water to it at all. Like if you're running a rainbow, then sure, you can fit cold res in that.
Yeah.
But that's not what this god was set up to do.
Yeah. Now, of course, the Veti Gaijas can do cold resistance, right? They can also do Breath of Winter, which is pretty good. They can also do Elemental Fortitude, which is pretty good. So they have a lot of options to get the cold, but it takes a script slot. I do think it's worth it, though. A lot of time, not always, but a lot of times it's worth it to waste one of those early script spots on it.
I mean, in this case, it would have been absolutely critical, yeah.
Yeah.
And because the enchantment version gives plus 10 CR, it should give, that'll give them 15 total, which should give them basically total immunity to the auras.
Yeah, I think also Breath of Winter gives 10. Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, the problem with Breath of Winter is that because of the friendly fire consideration with that spell, they sometimes won't cast it. Viim shouldn't have that issue because at least their guys do have cold resistance natively. But being unreliable, you assign some indie guys a bodyguard because you just want to bring them along, and then suddenly your cold resistance doesn't work. Like that feels bad.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know how that worked. I've definitely heard of people having that problem before, so I'm glad you bring it up.
What's his name? Logi actually put that in that spell description thing there in his mod.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. If you look at the description, it mentions the
objective mods, mechanical descriptions. We've got it on. So let's see. Is it in?
Yeah. No, I saw it there. That's why I was.
Oh, you saw it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Breath of Winter is
Breath of Winter. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's kind of cool that the AI considers it, because friendly fire is annoying. But yeah, so I guess you get to pick there what you choose to do. This fort's being locked down by a scout. That's a little unfortunate. It looks like there's a small amount of anti-raiding stuff that's been put in pretty much every province by Viim here. So Viim really ramping up their counter-raiding game, but Xibalba also, having lost a fair amount of stuff, I believe, last turn, has kind of paused on some of the raiding.
Yeah, the last turn was where they lost that major stack because Viim basically started out the war by successfully predicting where at least one of those Xibalba stacks was going to go and just cutting down a huge number of Aussies.
Right. And the other thing, too, is we can see, while Viim did a lot to do counter-raiding, which is kind of my inclination, I like counter-raiding a lot, he didn't do much in terms of raiding himself to take back stuff that Xibalba took from him. And we can see that Xibalba planted tiny little traps. There's Itzes everywhere. There's obsidian warriors in places almost not. And this is kind of goes back to some of the problems of him sitting in his fort for the first turn of war because he had to finish demonic cleansing. And now all of a sudden these things where he could be having traps for Xibalba to land in, Well, Zabalba's got traps for him to land in if he's trying to raid him back.
Yeah. So that first turn swing, which oftentimes can be like only a temporary province shift, seems to become getting locked in as more and more permanent as it drags on. Because while he did recover a little bit of territory here, like we can see just a little bit on that turn, he's still down the vast majority of his land from that start of the war.
Yeah. So Veniheim's on a clock is, I think, the short way to say it.
Yeah, he needs to take back these provinces. He needs to force that decisive fight, which he's been trying to do, to his credit. But it's looking grimmer and grimmer as the turns go on, and as he's unable to actually take that victory, which he really needs at this point in order to start taking back his territory.
Yeah. You know, the other thing that I just point out here before because I think we're near the end of this episode here, but magic phasing into the fort is also tricky because you don't really know what's going to go in, like what they're going to storm with if they just ping and all these things. You one of the things you can do with Vediheim once you get like an air random Nephil Jarl is you can jump on top of armies that aren't on forts. And you can have stuff stealthy hidden there waiting to do the point buffing. And, that can just be a way to get basically just significantly more reliable outcomes. But yeah, even though you probably still need all the things we were talking about, storm staff and things like that.
Yeah, you need to have the suite of your generic answers to the Oslotl problem.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. We probably missed some things. Let me scan through here real quick. We'll just see if there's anything that pops up that was really big. We didn't cover the Agartha bits. We'll go look at Agartha real quick.
Yeah,
I guess Agartha is chomping into TNG a little.
I mean, they're not super relevant, but they're trying. They're doing something.
Yeah. They've taken this as a demon gate. Though maybe this was gifted to them by TNG. I'm not sure. Okay, closing thoughts, Sai.
I mean, I think that we've kind of covered it in terms of when we were doing the overview for both of the nations. So in the TNG Pan front, we're still waiting to see Pan deploy a big army, which, we kind of called them out on before. Arthia's Alpha Strike, which you pointed out the duplicity of, but it similarly didn't show yet what their major stacks look like. TNG, by comparison, is comfortable throwing around their weight, actually deploying their armies to kick off the war, and looks like they're set up to have a big battle there and possibly on that wasteland province to the northeast. And then meanwhile, Vediheim, poor Vediheim, is trying to do what we have kind of been talking about how you get out of a coalition war. You force a major engagement, you kill at least one of the invading forces, and they're just not having very much luck doing it. They're down so much territory, and their attempts to both block raiding parties and push back themselves have been largely muted compared to the losses that they took at the opening of the war.
Yeah. And, I think before this war started, I guess my closing thought will be, before this war started, I was just much more favorable on Vediheim. I was like, okay, they can do rigor mortis. They're going to be able to deal with all these Sair.
No, I
but
agree,
just when I actually look at this army, it's like, ooh, like this was a lot. This Gath army looked a lot scarier than that Vediheim army. And some of it could just be because, the Vedi army compacts really small when you look at it, because they're all so dense, but
part of it really is just the difference in the wind conditions that the Gath army has. So Vediheim's army appears to be relying almost purely on Wailing Winds, the Rigor Play, and Wrathful Skies. Whereas the Gath army has many different tools. So they have the Firestorm, sure, but they also have Gifts from Heaven, and then they also have the Demons. And between everything that the Gath army has, it's just such a multi-dimensional setup that it's hard to deal with it with just one singular answer. That said, Vediheim seems to still believe that he can beat that and has the tests to show that. So I believe him. Like, I think that, if he'd managed to get everything together and take on that gas stack, that he could have done it. But it's still just a very hard fight. And I similarly agree with you that when we were looking at the war from the start, both of us actually expected Vediheim to be able to take at least one or two major engagements very early on and then start clawing their way back in from that. And that just hasn't happened yet, in part just because of how Gath has been maneuvering.
Yeah, I mean, the only part which is kind of a knock on Vediheim, and it's not really a knock, it's just that they wanted to get demonic cleansing.
Yeah.
So they took the first turn bent over, and that's kind of on them. But otherwise, it's just the other players have been playing really well.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, cool. Well, if you made it to the end, thank you so much for sticking with us. And Sai, as always, look forward to casting each of these turns with you. So thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting.
All right. Take care, folks.